Hey buddies, Mr. Pugly here. Now Doomfist has gotten quite a significant buff, which has caused the community and a lot of content creators to say he's kind of OP, but in hindsight, it's really only the Doomfist players that really know how to play Doomfist that seem OP. A zero experience Doomfist, or someone who jumps into Doomfist thinking he's going to be OP right away, is going to come into a rude awakening because he does require quite the high skill ceiling to be completely optimal with him and frankly not even die. And it also takes the enemy team, the person who's playing against Doomfist, to not really know how to counter him, because I'm going to tell you a couple different ways that you can actually counter Doomfist, from general tips, from strictly DPS, tank, and support tips, and what you can pick to counter him, because it seems like a lot of people are playing the new Doomfist and a lot of people are complaining because usually you don't see a lot of Doomfist, frankly, because Doomfist wasn't a good hero, and he's still not top tier, but he is causing a lot of problems because a lot of people are picking him, and he is a little bit more lethal to backline players, which is going to be a main reason why we're talking about every single role. So first things first, let me go over some general tips. Now, a general tip that you can really do, think about your positioning. Doomfist is a character that really thrives on positioning and singling out players, either to kill them very easily or to disrupt the backline to make you and your team panic. Now, a good way that you can actually counter this is making sure that you are in a position that doesn't allow you to take too much CC damage. Like, don't be right up against walls at all times. Of course, there's going to be some situations where you can't really help that, but try to get the high ground. A lot of the times, Doomfist thrives on a very horizontal lane, and frankly, you can get some really good vertical movement with Doomfist by flying up in the air with his slam ability. But generally, he really thrives on the horizontal plane. So if you can get in some higher positioning, perhaps coordinate with your team to be like, hey, this guy's really messing me up. Let's all team up and focus on him whenever he comes in so I don't die and no longer can give you healing, assuming you're a support. And I know that's kind of a lame tip. I know communication is kind of a hard topic in Overwatch. I know it's a competitive game, so people should be kind of used to communication. But generally, in some matches, there's players that don't want to communicate at all. But let's actually go over some ways that you can counter him yourself so you don't have to rely on others. So some picks that you can actually choose as tanks is going to be Orisa. Orisa doesn't get any CCs when she's in her Halt mode, which is her like super armor, so she can get that up pretty frequently so she doesn't actually get disrupted by Doomfist too much. Besides that, you could play Roadhog to easily hook him. If you hook him, you know, there's no way for him to prevent a hook besides running really fast. So if you hook him, you can kind of stop all his momentum there. Zarya can really help a player that's being singled out by bubbling them, which is always useful. She's not necessarily an optimal pick, but you know, it's better than nothing. Reinhardt can sort of counter Doomfist. Doomfist's game plan is to kind of get close to the enemy team, so you can play against that by being Reinhardt since he's mostly a close range hero, as well as getting a well-timed charge, as well as if you get a Earth Shatter on him, he's pretty much dead. Now let's move on from DPS. Now, there isn't as many CCs as there used to be in Overwatch 1, so DPS doesn't have as many options. Like I would suggest back in the day McCree, but we're not able to do that. So I'm going to offer some other suggestions, like perhaps playing a character that literally cannot be hit by Doomfist via Echo or Pharah. Echo and Pharah have amazing abilities that allow them to essentially be really high up in the air. And if you're high up in the air, Doomfist really can't get you at all, so you can really target him if needed. You can play Junkrat, potentially lay a trap where you think Doomfist is going to be. It's not always going to get them. A smart Doomfist or a smart player usually never gets captured by the trap, but it can prevent them from going headfirst into your team if they suspect you are laying a trap. So it kind of makes them have to think and play a little bit differently, so you can use that if needed. As well as Junkrat having his mind, which can push the player out of positioning, because Doomfist, as I said before, needs really specific positioning to be optimal. So if you can push him out of the way with the mind, you know, you're going to be free at that point. You could play Mei. Mei's kind of harder. You could potentially wall him off, blow him down with your blaster, but that's kind of a niche option. And I'm sure there's some other DPS that I'm not thinking of on the top of my head or written down, so feel free to comment it down below. But another general tip that you can really do is that Doomfist can't really thrive at all if everyone focuses him, because he doesn't have an amazing way to protect him besides Shrum directly in front of him with his block or escaping. So you could potentially focus his backline as well and focus their supports, because if there's no one healing the Doomfist is usually going to be dead. Unless, once again, the Doomfist is really good and he is making sure he's getting out of dodge every single time. Generally, even with the best Doomfist, they do need a little bit of healing to survive certain dives. Next, let's move over some support options that you can choose to actually counter him. If you're familiar with my top 5 supports in the meta, You know that meta choices with supports are generally the supports that can have decent mobility or ways to CC targets or prevent instant kills. Thus, my options to counter Doomfist as support main is really going to be the Miller 5 that I suggested as top 5. Generally, you want to pick Ana. If you see the Doomfist is blocking, that means he's going to be slowed, which is your chance to actually hit a sleep dart on him and potentially communicate with your team and be like, oh, let's all gang up on him and kill him before he wakes up or during his wake up animation. You play as Lucio, where you boop him and push him out of positioning, as well as give your team speed boost, potentially speed boost the backline that has no escape, who potentially escapes from the Doomfist, but really your main job is to boop him. Moira is a great choice because if the Doomfist is smart, he wants to pick supports, and if you are a support that literally cannot die by just escaping and then potentially getting a new positioning on the high ground with her super jump and her fade ability, you're going to be golden, so you can escape from Doomfist very easily with Moira. You can play Kiriko to potentially give yourself invulnerability or teammates that need it invulnerability at the right time so Doomfist can't actually get any CCs on you, and potentially use your teleport to get out of dodge if needed. And finally, you could play Baptiste with your immortality field and your super jump to give you the edge over Doomfist. With the super jump, of course, you can get in a new position where Doomfist can't really get you, or potentially just be so high up in the air for a long period of time where Doomfist is going to be focused by your other teams where he's going to need to retreat, so that is a nice escape tool by Baptiste, as well as a mortality field, of course, just potentially save you from being killed or your said teammates. I can't stress this enough, Doomfist is not as much of a problem as you think he is. You're going to see a lot of Doomfist recently due to the fact that he was buffed, but I don't feel like he is uncounterable. There's plenty of ways for you to play against Doomfist. The big thing in Overwatch is a lot of time when you're losing, you need to sit back and think, hey, what can I do differently to actually win the fight? And Doomfist is no different. Just pick some counter picks that I suggested. There's even some counter picks I probably didn't think of that you guys could suggest in the comments. So help a fellow Overwatch player out and comment them down below. And if you'd like to see me become full-time on YouTube, don't forget to click the link down below or on the top left to become a member. Speaking of members, the members who support us every single day is going to be Clairvoyance, Rick Iglesias, and Cameron. They support me as little as $5 a month, and you can also support me. It really makes a difference. You have no idea how much of an impact these members make on my life day to day. And as always, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and I hope you all have a great day. Bye-bye.
And the last shall be first to immerse in a pass out heat, facing him up with a moxie melt till he woke up drowning in tchotchke hell. War in a cave with a torch on a wall, then a window arrangement of porcelain dolls.